Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Amreen Poonawala. I am the Honorary Secretary for the Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for Ontario, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. It is my distinct privilege to welcome you all here this afternoon to the Ismaili Centre, Toronto, to hear from our speaker, Aleem Nasser, on how to become a high performer. Let us begin by acknowledging the rich and enduring history of Indigenous peoples in Ontario. We acknowledge that this land we gather on today is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of Credit First Nations. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Toronto Purchase and applies to land east of Brown's Line to Woodbine Avenue and north towards Newmarket. This territory is also covered by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Center is part of a global network of 6 Ismaili centers, each architecturally unique, yet designed to reflect a mood of humility, forward outlook, friendship, and dialogue. In addition to hosting cultural and artistic performances, the Center hosts a series of lectures and symposia to encourage exchange and mutual understanding between diverse peoples, communities, and faiths while broadening intellectual horizons. Today's session is collectively brought to you by a number of institutional bodies. The Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for Canada works towards the improvement and economic well-being of our Jamaat while providing guidance and counseling with housing, employment, and business-related matters. The Aga Khan Education Board for Canada strives to improve the quality of life and human development through education, with specific goals of ensuring that every child has access to quality early childhood education, to enriching experiences, and to post-secondary education. The Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board is responsible to deliver youth and sports programming to ensure that the youth are equipped to compete successfully in all walks of life through merit and playing leadership roles in humanitarian services. The Educators Alliance is an association created for Ismaili educators to provide a platform for networking, mentorship, professional development, and employment for its members. Today, we are honored to host Aleem Nasser this afternoon. Aleem is a high-performance consultant, university lecturer, speaker, and author, to name a few. After spending many years studying high performance and success, Aleem has created an innovative approach that has helped over 2,000 individuals to quickly achieve best practices in all areas of their lives, while also improving their mental and emotional state. Aleem has taught his equation for success at numerous universities across Canada, assisting students to quickly achieve academic excellence. He has worked with sports teams to win championships and consulted with organizations such as Accenture, Deloitte, the Government of Canada, and the Royal Bank of Canada. In March of this year, Aleem was invited to do a TEDx talk at the University of Alberta. Congratulations. We look forward to him speaking more on how each one of us can be more strategic and effective in achieving our most important goals. The session will be moderated by Rahila Nanji. Rahila is a member on the Aga Khan Education Board for Ontario, responsible for the Excellence Portfolio. Rahila is also an entrepreneur with a strong background in marketing. We're incredibly privileged to have Rahila here moderate the Q&A after Aleem's presentation. Without any further ado, let us please welcome Aleem Nasser to the stage.
Thank you, Amreen, and thank you all for being here today. Am I using this? Yeah, before I continue, I just wanted to thank specifically the Economic Planning Board, the Education Board, and the Youth and Sports Board, as well as all the volunteers. You guys have worked tirelessly, you've done a lot of great work, and honestly, just in the planning process, it's just been nothing but sheer enjoyment and pleasure just with working with all of you. So thank you for that. You've made me feel very welcome and appreciated, and I just want to express my gratitude and my thanks for making me feel so appreciated by being here. I also wanted to state that I actually feel very proud to be in a Smiley today, because just seeing the leadership that we have here makes me feel very proud, and I feel very confident that our community is in very, very good hands. And what I wanted to do also, if it'd be okay, is if we could just give them all a round of applause. So I wanted to tell you just a little brief story, and some of you may know this, some of you may not, but 10 years ago I came up with an idea on how I can help students achieve academic excellence. And this idea worked for me, and it helped a lot of other students as well, but I'd never actually gone out and taught it to the masses or a lot of other people. So I reached out to the council here in Toronto, and I asked them if I could do a little talk on how we could help our students perform better academically. And the Toronto Jamaat and the Toronto Council was fantastic. So I honestly want to tell you that I think it was that talk that I gave here. I think it was at a different Jamaat Khana because the ICT wasn't developed at that time. But I believe it was that talk that actually gave me the confidence and the conviction in what I was doing. And so my heartfelt appreciation again for everything you've done. And as a result of that talk, I actually got hired to teach this information at various universities. And over 2,000 students later, the success rate has been quite high. So I owe you guys a lot of gratitude and appreciation, because if it wasn't for the Toronto Jamaat, I don't think I would have had the confidence to continue. So thank you very much for that. I also wanted to thank the Jamaat and the other people who are maybe not the Smileys who came here today. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, and you probably have other better things to do, so thank you for being here today, and I promise that we will do our best to give you some value today and to help you potentially look at new things or look at things in a new way so you can increase your performance levels and also have more enjoyment and have a more balanced life. Just a couple of things I wanted to state before we continue, and that is that some of the things that we're going to talk about today, you may not necessarily agree with. In fact, you may have been taught things in the opposite way. So some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today may actually seem counterintuitive, or may even seem a bit incorrect. But that's okay. And the reason why it's okay is because we want to start looking at things from a different perspective, because Einstein once made a quote and he said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. Okay, so what's going to happen here is that sometimes as we're talking through this and we're going through some of these concepts, some of it may seem a little bit foreign to you, and what I would ask is just to keep an open mind, okay? And give it a shot. Like when we're talking about certain things, give it a shot, try it out for yourself, And if it doesn't work and you don't agree with it, then that's okay. You can just disregard it. But if you can keep an open mind, you may get a new idea, you may get a new perspective, and that may help you to achieve certain things in your life that you may be struggling at. Okay? So here's the plan for today. What we're going to do is we're going to watch the TED Talk that I gave at the University of Alberta. And I did this TED Talk in March of this year. And once we watch that TED Talk, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick fireside chat. And Rahila is going to ask me a couple of questions in terms of the TED Talk. And what we're going to really try and do is unpack some of that information, because I only had 15 minutes. I think it was just under 15 minutes to talk about stuff that took me over 15 years to come up with. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and unpack it a little bit and help you get a little bit more familiar with this information. And then after we do that, then I'm going to take actually questions from the audience. Okay, so as we're doing this, if there's anything you don't understand, or if something is not clear for you, just keep that in mind or make a note of it, and then you can ask me whatever you feel you need to ask me at the end. But just in summary, I just wanted to tell you that the main reason that I'm here today is really to help you understand that there could be a new and a better way to accomplish the goals that you want. Okay, that's the sole reason that we're here. So if you're open to that and you're willing to, maybe put on a different hat and maybe see things from a different perspective, I think you can get a lot from today's talk. So that's really it. I don't have anything else to say up to this point. So if it's okay, I think we can start watching that TED Talk, and then we'll continue with the fireside chat, and I'll get interviewed by Rahila, and hopefully we can unpack this information in a little bit more detail. Okay, thank you.
I have to say, on a personal level, I've seen the TED Talk a couple of times, and every time I see it, I actually gain something more from it, so thank you once again.
Thank you.
But obviously, doing a TED Talk is actually a huge deal. So my first question to you is actually a three-part question. I want to know how you felt, so we'll start with the first part. I want to know how you felt immediately before you did the talk.
So there's actually a bit of a story in that.
Okay, and I think you like stories.
In that question, yeah. I like telling stories because I think if you tell a story, you can learn a lot from it versus just give information to people. So, I was going to do this TED Talk, and I think my start time to the talk was about 3:15.
Okay.
And at around 2:45, I had a complete panic attack. So I forgot all my lines. I forgot everything. And the reason I forgot my lines and the reason why I had a meltdown was because although there's about 200 people in the audience and all that, I realized that wasn't my audience. My audience was the whole world, because they're going to get access to this information, and Sadhru uncle could share it with all his friends in East Africa, and then they could all have a good laugh and look at my mistakes, right?
I hear you.
So that's what I was thinking about. And it really, and by the way, I don't have a Sadhru uncle, and if your name is Sadhru, please just I don't have any issues with any Sadhrus or anything like that. So I was just very afraid, because like, what if I screw up? The whole world can see it, and I can't hide from it. So I'll be honest with you, on a scale of 1 to 10, my confidence level at that point was probably about a 1 out of 10.
Okay.
And then they called me in, and they wanted to put one of these mics on. So they said, okay, how do you feel? Are you ready to go? And I said, well, I actually just had a panic attack, right? And they thought I was joking. And so they said, oh, you'll be fine, just go ahead. And literally, I'm not joking, I actually wanted to leave. Like, I wanted to leave. But I said my mom was in the audience. So my mom, I know her, she would have been, you're not leaving. You're going to do this. So I realized that I couldn't leave. So I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? So I said a little prayer. I said, please help me so I can get through this. And it helped a little bit. And my confidence rose probably to about a 3 or 4 out of 10. And so now I'm backstage, and I'm just watching the other people present. And the person or the people that were before me, they were on stage, but actually wasn't a speaker. They were actually performers. They were dance performers. And they were just, I guess they were just doing some Latin music, dancing. They're dancing Latin music and stuff like that. And I actually implemented this equation. I began thinking, what's their mindset? Like, what are they thinking? What's going on in their head? And I imagined that they were just there to have fun. They were just there to have a good time. And it didn't matter if they made mistakes. They were just there to just enjoy themselves. So I adopted that mindset. And I'm not joking, literally my confidence level went from about a 3 to about an 11 out of 10.
In what kind of period of time?
A few seconds.
Wow.
I just completely transformed. So all of a sudden I felt very confident, I was very excited, I was motivated. And so I get up there, and I'm about to present, and they gave me the clicker, and the clicker didn't work.
Oh no.
So I'm there in front of like 200 people, and I got a clicker in my hand, and that's it. So I give the clicker to the MC. I said, this thing doesn't work. So she goes and she takes off, and she gets it fixed, and now I'm looking at the audience, right? And they're all looking at me. And I don't have any jokes. Like, I didn't come prepared to tell jokes or anything. So I tell them, I said, unfortunately, I don't have any jokes to tell you, but keeping in line with the whole dancing theme, I do know one dance move. So I actually did the moonwalk for the audience before I did my TED Talk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we saw no evidence of the
Yeah.
moonwalk.
Yeah, I was hoping they would put it in. I thought it would make for a better...
I think you should do a little demo.
Okay, so I'll do it. So hopefully it's yeah, my shoes are okay, but basically it was this before I went on.
Amazing. Good job.
But the grips on my shoes are a little bit, it's a little bit, I don't know, sticky, so I can't really, look that cool as I do it.
You looked
But I
cool.
promise you I looked a lot cooler at the TED Talk.
No evidence.
Yeah, even though there's no evidence. I'm sure some guy whipped out his phone and took some video.
Maybe Sadhru Bhai.
But it's actually a true story. It's a true story.
Amazing.
And then I just came in and I delivered. The energy was different, and I was in a better mood, and I felt it went a lot better, and you got to see the final product.
Amazing. Okay, so that was how you felt immediately before, even though you'd, I'm sure, spent a long time preparing for it.
Yeah, one of the things that was important was, knowing content is one thing, but being able to deliver it is something else. So I actually spent about a month just practicing the verbiage over and over again.
Wow. Amazing. Well, we saw the result, as you said. And then how did you feel, especially after going through your panic attack and everything else, how did you feel immediately afterwards?
I just felt relief.
I'm sure.
Because it was about a 4-month preparation process for 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, but you only have one shot at it. Like, there's no retakes.
No,
So
one and done.
Yeah, it's one and done. And you got about 5 or 6 cameras on you, the lights are on you, you can't see the audience, and you just have to go, and if you mess it up, you mess it up, that's it.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so immediately afterwards you felt relief.
I felt relief, yeah, so I felt relief, and so my mom's in the audience, and I live in Calgary, right? So we live in Calgary, and this was at the U of A, which is in Edmonton. So we made a plan, right? So as soon as I was done my talk, my mom was going to meet me at the exit, and then so I grabbed all my stuff and everything, and I'm still a little bit shaken up, right? Because I can't believe I did the moonwalk, right? And so I come off, and I'm a little bit shaken up, and then they said, are you going to stick around? So I said, no, I have to go because I got a 3-hour drive. And they said, okay, can we just give you these gifts and everything? So they gave me these gifts, and so then I left, and then we're driving, and my mom hasn't said a word or anything, and I haven't said a word, and we're driving, and about 10 minutes later, I asked my mom, I'm like, so what do you think? How'd it go? She looks at me and she goes, Beta, why did you do the moonwalk?
Amazing.
So my response was, I have no clue. Yeah, it felt right.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you've got to go with that, and obviously you've got to have fun.
Yeah,
as well. It's
yeah,
an important part.
yeah.
Okay, so in your intro and in your TED Talk, you refer a lot to the mindset.
Yes.
So what exactly is the mindset?
So I kind of alluded to it in the talk, but basically our mindset is what we actually believe and what we think. So it's what we believe and think about ourselves, others, and the world around us. So in a nutshell, if you have if you have negative emotions, right? If you're feeling negative and you're a little bit pessimistic and stuff, it just means your mindset is a little bit lower. Okay? But if you're happier and you're excited and you're motivated, that means you're probably at a higher mindset. And the way to sort of cultivate that mindset is really to pay a lot of attention to what you allow in that influences you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what it is. But if you think about life in kind of a holistic way, you may have differing opinions about different parts of your life. So how does that all come together?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Of course. So, for example, in life, you may not have a negative mindset towards everything in your life. There might be elements that are different for you. So how does that work?
Yeah, so basically, I think the best way to do that is to kind of take a look and see what areas in your life are going well.
Okay.
And look at the mindset you have in these areas, right? And then you want to look at the areas that maybe aren't going so well and look at the mindset you have in those areas. So for example, is there an area that is there something you really enjoy, or an area in your life that you really feel, good about?
I love yoga, and anyone in my family, in my close circle, will know that I actually schedule my entire life around my yoga practice, and it makes me happier than anything.
So what are some of your mindsets that you have about
pure
yoga?
Excitement.
Excitement?
I literally schedule my entire week around my practice.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go.
Yeah.
I turn up to my mat half an hour before. I can't wait to meet my friends there.
Excellent.
It's very positive.
Is there an area in your life where you feel it may not go so well, or where you have some challenges?
Perhaps areas of my work life are not as positive.
Yeah, so if you made a concerted effort to take some of that mindset that you have from yoga and try to implement that in areas of your work where you're challenging, feeling a bit of a challenge, what do you think would happen to some of your strategies?
Well, so if I started thinking about elements of my work in a different way and perhaps try to be more excited about them and bring in some of my yoga practices, so perhaps turning up for those elements half an hour earlier, maybe looking forward to seeing people more. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So because you change your mindset about work, you naturally, on your own just now, just came up with a few strategies on how you could perform better at work.
It's so quick.
Very quick.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah. The key is that sometimes we just get stuck in one mindset, and we're not open to really looking for another mindset.
Amazing. And another thing that came up very strongly in the talk was the definition of personal success.
Yes.
So for you, what is your personal definition of success for you?
Yeah. So I actually had to really spend a lot of time defining my definition of success, because before I came up with my definition, I followed the definition that was kind of imposed on me.
Okay.
So when I was younger, so I'm about 20 now, so when I was like 3. Now, when I was probably in my 20s, I just followed the traditional definition of success, which was really what I was told was that if you make a lot of money, if you have a lot of status, you're successful. So I fell into that. And in the process, what ended up happening was I realized that I really didn't like myself too much. And what I realized is that if I don't like myself too much, I got to spend all my time with myself. So I better like myself.
Of course.
And I realized that I didn't like myself too much. And so then I just kind of had to figure it out, and I just kind of put that aside, and I came up with my own definition. And so there's 3 areas of my life where I think they're very important. And again, I had to have a lot of clarity around it. And the first one had to do with, number one, being proud of myself. So that's key. So I had to be proud of myself. So in what areas would that include? So one of the areas had to do with my career. So the area of my career which I really spent a long time thinking about was that I had to make sure that I was creating a positive impact in the world. So I really wanted to figure out how I could actually make life better for other people. So that was one area, and whenever I did that, or I helped someone, or I assisted someone, or I showed them a new way of doing something, I felt very good about myself, so I began to like myself a little bit more. Number 2 was the area of just spirituality. So I'm a Smiley Muslim, obviously, as you know, and just following the principles of our faith make me feel very, very proud of myself, and there's probably areas where I can improve on. But the more I try to follow the principles of generosity, ethics, kindness, things like that, the pillars of our faith, I feel very, very good about myself. So those are the areas. And then financially, obviously, I'd want to make sure that financially I can be stable enough to enjoy life on my own terms. And I'm kind of working on that right now.
Amazing. So I see completely, what you're saying about your personal definition for success and helping other people and how important that is to you. But how did that work, for example, when you worked with Deloitte, with Accenture? How did you deal with those situations? Because they feel slightly different to me.
Yeah. So the reason why I kind of left that world was because of that specific reason. So what happened was I found that when I was working in these type of organizations, the people were great. Like the education was great, the people were great, everything was sound, but I found that I didn't get the ability to express myself that well. And I'm a little bit of an innovative thinker, and sometimes when you work in different corporations, they want you to follow a specific method of doing things, and I would always come up with these better ways, or not better ways, like different ways of doing stuff, and they had their own system and all that kind of stuff, so I kind of just wanted to see if I could kind of do things on my own. So that's kind of the reason I decided to kind of go out and become an entrepreneur.
Amazing. So you honored yourself and what success looked like for you.
Honored myself, and I probably scared the heck out of my family in the process.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And I was scared too.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay, so let's move on to some questions that are perhaps a little bit tougher, and I hope it's okay.
You mean those weren't tough? Okay.
I hope it's okay to get a little bit tougher with you. So you talked about your personal challenges and how hard work wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Can you delve deeper into what those challenges were?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I had a lot of challenges, and I think I can break them down to 3 areas. So one area was academics. I really struggled in academics, and I always heard other people or listened to other people tell me, look, if you're not doing well in school, what should you do? Work harder. Mm-hmm. And literally, I would be spending probably up till about 2, 3 o'clock on a consistent basis.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning?
In the morning, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would just be doing my homework, and I'd be studying and things like that. And really didn't help because, as you know, I mean, I was put on academic probation my 3rd year of university, mm-hmm. and even in high school, I had less than a 70% average.
Wow.
That was one thing that kind of helped me realize that, look, I'm working hard, but wasn't really translating into success. Another area was in sports. So sports, which I love, but unfortunately I wasn't the greatest athlete. So I was good enough to make the team, but when we needed to score that winning goal or we needed to, get that winning point, I was the guy who had to sit on the bench. And the sad part is that I actually did practice and I did work hard to play better in sports, but I just couldn't get to that next level. And the third area was socially. So whenever I saw an attractive girl, I just ran the other way.
Okay, so those were your personal challenges.
Yeah.
But essentially what you're saying here is that your equation for success is actually applicable to many areas of life, not just from a studying perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Because the one thing that you take with you everywhere you go is your mindset.
Absolutely. Okay, so obviously your equation for success works. You have over 2,000 people that have benefited from it. But what would you actually say to students that are being told consistently to work hard?
Yeah, so I would tell them that that information is correct, but it's not complete. I would say that working hard is important, but if it's not backed up with the right thinking, and it's backed up with the wrong type of thinking, mm-hmm. that effort that they're putting in can actually create more damage than good.
Okay.
So for example, let's say they don't believe that they'll do well in math, mm-hmm. right? So what'll happen is when they're studying with the mindset that they're still not going to do well, or they can't get the problem, or they can't get the question. And even if they get it right, on the exam, they'll double guess,
okay.
or they'll overthink it, because they deep down just don't believe that they're capable at it. even though they do all the questions, even they do all their homework, they'll find a way, and their mindset will kind of let them down a little bit.
Okay, so again, it comes down to mindset.
Absolutely, and I've seen students, and we've all gone to school here. We know students that they don't even study that much, and somehow they get the 80s and the 90s, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, what do you do that I don't? In fact, there's a really interesting story. When I was in university, they used to be at the University of Calgary. It's called the Den, right? So it's where the Den is where everybody goes and they go drinking and all that kind of stuff. And I don't drink or anything like that, but there used to be a lineup of people on a Thursday night to go to the Den at the University of Calgary. And I remember I saw some of these guys from my class there, and I'm thinking to myself, look, they're going to go and go to the bar, and I'm going to go and I'm going to study. So I studied probably till 2 o'clock at night that day, and we had to write our midterm the next day. So I wrote the midterm, and then we got our exams back a couple of weeks later, and those guys who went to the Den, they beat me.
They beat you?
They beat me.
Wow.
Absolutely. And the reason why was because they didn't work harder than me. They actually just thought and believed deep down that they were intelligent and that they were smart.
Amazing.
And deep down, I didn't. So all that effort never translated into success. And the good news is, though, I actually figured it out during that semester, and then eventually I beat them, so that was good.
Good. I'm sure you felt good.
Yeah, on the final I beat them.
But with the perspective of, I think most of us have grown up with parents who have said to us, work hard, work hard, work hard.
Yeah.
So there's the student side, but there's also the parental side too.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the parents, and perhaps there are even parents in the audience today?
Yeah, so what I would do is I would say to them that before you tell your student to work harder, you would want to find out, number one, actually 2 things. I would try to find out what success means to your child. Mm-hmm. What does it actually mean? Now, if the child is younger, then maybe they're not able to articulate it. But to push a student or to push a child towards achieving success that doesn't interest them is the first problem. Because if they're not interested and they don't feel passionate about it, it becomes very hard to be successful, because what's their mindset? Why am I doing this? I'm being forced to do it. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is, if they're not performing at the level that you know they can perform at, is after you help them define and get clear on their definition of success, what you want to be able to do is you want to help them understand and get a better idea in terms of how they're thinking. Mm-hmm. Like if they actually don't think they're intelligent, or they actually think they're not smart, don't push them to work harder, get them to change their thinking. And if you get them to change the thinking, you'll be impressed, because they'll come up with their own strategies on how they can do better.
Amazing.
Just like you did with that whole yoga example.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it really feels like it's about communicating with your family to understand what the driving factors are.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding, doing all the heavy lifting in your head first before you start executing.
So how early do you think somebody can adopt your equation for success?
So how can somebody adopt it?
How early?
How early?
How early in their lives?
I would say sooner the better.
Okay.
The sooner the better. Because I believe that when we came into this world as little kids and babies, we actually came with an optimal mindset. Mm-hmm. But it was through the years of being told, you're not good enough, you failed at this, you need to do better at this, all this kind of stuff. We started adopting this belief that we were lacking in some sort of way. So I believe that we really need to pay attention to our environment, because I think our environment is the biggest contributor to our mindset. And we have to figure out how we can implement things in our environment that actually allow us to absorb information and data and things like that to help us see our potential. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that, I asked my students, I said, what's more valuable? Is money more valuable than time, or is time more valuable than money? So everybody says, time is more valuable than money. So everybody says, well, time is the most valuable thing. And I disagree. I think your mindset is the most valuable thing, because what good is all the time in the world if you're miserable?
Or all money in the world. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you have the right mindset, you can actually have a better time, right? You can live a better life. But more importantly, if you have the right mindset, you can actually free up more time to do the things that you enjoy.
Amazing. I'm sure the audience will be happy to hear, what is your favorite success story?
My favorite success story? Oh, this is actually a really good one. I was fortunate enough to go to the Jubilee Games in 2008. And anybody go to the Jubilee Games at all? Anybody? Yeah, so it was a great experience. So it was in Nairobi. And so I was the head coach for the men's international volleyball team. And when we went, we were very confident because we believed that we were Canadians and we had all the resources and we had some good athletes and things like that. So my job was to help them play against other Somalis from different countries. So we thought it was pretty much in the bag that we could do well until we met the Syrians. The Syrians, those guys. So let me give you a perspective in terms of what these athletes were like from Syria. Their average height on the volleyball team was about 6'5" to 6'7".
Okay. Compared to
our guys, which they're probably just a bit taller than me, and I'm about 6 feet.
Okay.
So maybe 6 feet, 6'1". So the height advantage went to the Syrians for sure. But that wasn't even where they had the biggest advantage. They had the biggest advantage in the fact that we found out that some of these athletes actually played in the Olympics.
Oh, you didn't know that before?
We didn't know that before.
Okay.
We never got the memo on that one. And then I wasn't too sure. I'm like, no, that's not true. Until one of the guys actually gave me his business card. And he said, whenever you come to Syria, say hello. And his business card, he was actually he actually owned a volleyball clinic. So he would actually teach volleyball.
He was that good.
He was that good. And he was just one of the players. So all these guys either played on the Olympics or they actually taught volleyball for a living.
Okay.
And my guys, probably our best player, one guy played provincials. The rest probably played high school or college.
Wow.
So we have to play against these guys. So it was a huge difference. So no one gave us a chance, and no one thought we could do it. But I knew this information. So what happened was in the dressing room, it was just a simple conversation I had with my team. And the conversation went something like this, and that is, look, if we believe more that we can win this game, more than they believe they can win, we've got this. And I'd like to tell you that we won, but we didn't.
Oh.
We actually lost by 3 points, though. We lost by 3 points, and I'm telling you, I saw a bunch of high school and college players almost beat Olympic caliber players.
Amazing.
And in fact, we were leading at one point, and they had to call a timeout.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was. Even as I'm talking about it right now, I still have shivers.
Of course.
It was an amazing experience.
That's a massive achievement. And then you obviously gave all of the players something to take away in terms of their own mindset as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, amazing.
I hope so.
Okay, so unfortunately we've run out of time for the moderated element of the conversation, but we would like to invite audience questions now. So Slido, I'm not sure if the details on Slido have been shared, but please post your questions on the Slido app or access the Slido, which is sli.do, and there's a code that should be coming up, but the code is STAR. I'm going to check if anything's come through already. It may not have. We have a very helpful flip chart if we need that as well.
Yes. Okay. So exactly. So the question was, how does repetition aid in being more successful? Is that correct? Okay. So repetition is very, very important. So in sports, what happens is that when you start, so some of the best players in the world, they all have coaches. So if they're so good, why do they need a coach? The reason why they need a coach is because they have to get to the point where they're actually not thinking, they're just reacting. As soon as you start thinking when you're playing sports, that's when you get into trouble. So the reason why repetition is so important is when an event happens, you can react without thinking. So the more you do it, when an event happens, you just react to it. So that's how it works in sports. But here's something, and I'm just going to take this off on a little bit of a tangent. I noticed there's some students here. Okay, and one of the things about repetition when it comes to academics is the fact that you need to understand, most people think that, if they have a lot of knowledge, then they should do well on a test or do well on an exam. Okay, because they've put all this information in their head, they've got all this data and statistics or whatever, so they have it all in their head and they should naturally do well. But here's where it gets interesting. You're never tested on what's in your head. You're never tested on what's in your head. You're tested on how well you can articulate what's in your head. It's a subtle difference. So what I do is I tell my students that, look, if you're going to write an exam, okay, and you start putting information into your head, I call this internalizing, this is not enough. What you actually need to do is do something called externalizing, which means communicating it. So most students, they don't really externalize too much. But if you really want to do well academically, what you want to do is you want to externalize, but make that circle bigger. And the bigger you make the circle, this part here is your knowledge. That's the part that you're actually going to communicate on the test. So does that make sense? So when you talk about repetition, if you can repeat what you know over and over again in the externalization phase, when it comes to the exam, it becomes very simple. Because your eyes have already seen your brain come up with that response. Are we good? Or
We've got a few that have come through on Slido. So the first question is in reference to distraction. And the question says, I'm not talking Netflix. I'm talking too many goals and too many things to achieve at the same time. How do I prioritize to ensure success?
Okay, so when it comes to prioritization, I think it might be easier if I stand up. When it comes to prioritization, the key here really is just not so much in terms of trying to do it all. What I would probably suggest is just get better at saying no to certain things. I mean, it's that simple. Just figure out what you can say no to. And if you can clear up some of the things that you can say no to, that list becomes shorter.
Can you give an example of what you could say no to?
Yeah, so for example, I don't know what the perspective is in terms of this, but let's say it has to do with, work, okay? So some people say that they have to do this, and they have to, let's say it's a salesperson, they have to make all these calls, then they have to go home, and they have to, have family obligations, and then they have other work obligations, and they have volunteer work to do, and then they got to drive the kids around, and then they got to do this, and they got to do that. Okay, so these are all things that we have to do in our life.
Yep.
But what you want to do is you want to start looking at certain things, and you want to say, listen, if I said no to that, how detrimental would my life be? And if it's really not going to make that much of a difference, say no to those things. And just by saying no, it really frees up a lot of time and space. And then when you said no to a few things, then what you can do is then you can say, okay, now what actually makes the biggest impact in my life? So maybe making those sales calls create the biggest impact. Why? Because if you can make a sale, then and you get the income from that, that's what puts the food on your plate, right? But maybe you may have to say no to doing some volunteer work, which really doesn't impact you that much.
Okay.
And I'm not saying volunteer work is not important, but I'm saying maybe at the stage of your life, especially if you're struggling for income or something like that, you may have to say no to certain things so you can actually get yourself on track.
So it's prioritizing based on what's important in your life at that time.
Yeah, and everybody's life is different
as
well, right? But I just think there's an art to saying no.
Yep.
In fact, that's a title of a good book, The Art of Saying No. So I think that might be a good title or a good philosophy.
Okay, so another question that's actually got quite a number of votes is, it seems like such a simple formula.
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult to implement this on a day-to-day basis? What discipline is required to stick to it?
So the question was that it's so hard to change your mindset.
Yeah, the question was, why is it so difficult to implement this on a day-to-day basis? What discipline is required to stick to it?
Okay, so the reason why, it's a two-part question. The reason why it's so difficult is because a lot of us have been programmed at a young age to believe a certain belief. So whether we watch it on TV, whether we hear it from our parents, whether we hear it from our closest friends, the more we hear it, goes back to the whole concept of repetition, the more it becomes part of our belief system. Okay, so how do you fix it? What do you do? Okay, what you do is you want to start creating the opposite or better beliefs and make that part of your life. So repeat those things to yourself and over again. So we talk about affirmations. So affirmations are good, but I actually think more valuable than affirmations is when you collect evidence and just past experiences which can prove to you that you can be successful. So, it goes back, let's look at our volleyball team. Okay, before we even began playing sports, before we even began playing together as a team, these guys had one piece of homework I gave them. And what they had to do for 1 month is come up with 50 reasons why we were going to be the most successful team at the tournament. 50 reasons.
50 like 50?
50. Each person had to come up with 50 reasons why we would be the most successful. And what really was going on was I was getting them to cultivate that mindset. Every day they had to think why we were going to be successful. Every day we had to think why we're going to be successful. All of a sudden, you're playing volleyball, the mindset's already there, you just execute.
Amazing. And this is a great question as well. What are some concrete steps that we can take to evaluate and alter our mindsets?
Some concrete steps. So I just kind of touched on it, and I think, am I okay with the mic? Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay. I just kind of touched on it, but one of the things in terms of concrete steps is that if you can create logical proof why you can be successful, your mind will absorb it. Like logical reasons why you can do it. So again, I alluded to that on the TED Talk, and I just touched on it. But basically, if you can just sit there before you do anything, just for example, let's say you're gonna, let's say I always use the example. Let's say somebody wants to lose 10 pounds, but they don't have, they haven't been successful. If you can come up with logical reasons why it's possible for you to lose the 10 pounds, you'll start to notice that things are going to happen. So maybe what you start doing is you start thinking of things that were really a big challenge for you before, but you were able to solve those challenges. And you can say, hold on, that challenge, that was a lot harder challenge than losing 10 pounds. Now your mind starts to work for you versus against you. So for example, even coming here today, like I don't know the majority of you, I've never met majority of you before. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because I'm answering questions I've never even been briefed on before. But before I even did that, I told myself, look, I was able to do that TED Talk. And if I was able to do that TED Talk, then I should be able to do this.
So you take the challenges that you've already overcome and you apply the same principles over and over again.
Exactly. So that means you have to actually go out and create some challenges for yourself. Then you have a reference point, and then you can start succeeding. And if you don't do well in those original challenges, that's okay. Because people sometimes, they think failure is a bad word. Failure is not a bad word. Failure is a great word if you know how to use failure correctly. Because the most successful people, they know that failure actually means education. It's not anything against you. It just means you just got some valuable information on what you need to do next time to get better results.
Okay, I think that totally makes sense, and I think it's all transferable, right? Okay, so the next question, I'm trying to rank them by the ones that have the highest votes to make sure that everyone gains the most that they can.
Sure. As long as you don't ask me to do the moonwalk again, I'm fine.
Why? You did
because
it so
it just
well.
doesn't work. Like my grip isn't the right grip. If I had known, I would have worn the right shoes.
You love that. Okay, so right, you spoke about being grateful for your failures. Can you please elaborate on this and how failures can lead to a change in mindset? I guess it comes back to what you just said as well.
Yeah, so if you, let me try and rephrase it in a different way. So a lot of times we believe that if we fail, it's a personal, not attack, but it's a personal reflection of ourselves whenever we fail. So we run away from failure. But here's the interesting part. There is so much knowledge and there is so much information from each failure if you take the time to study that failure.
What do you mean?
So for example, let's say you fail at something, you wanted to achieve a certain result, but you didn't go well. And if you look back on it, you realize, hey, if I had just done that, I would have had a much better result. Or if I had just done that differently, I would have had a much better result. But most people don't do that. What they do is they say, oh, I failed and okay, I'm just not good at it, or I won't try again, or whatever. But if you actually take the time and you analyze that failure, you'll actually figure out a path that you need to create for the next time. And it's a really good example I tell my students was, I think it was Thomas Edison? Yeah, Thomas Edison. Do you guys know how many times he tried to create the light bulb? Like
hundreds.
Yeah, actually it was
Thousands.
10,000 times. And so he failed 9,999 times. And they asked him, they said, dude, you failed so many times. What are you doing? Why do you think you can do it? And he said, no, I didn't fail. I just figured out 9,999 ways not to do it.
So that was his mindset.
So what's the result? The result is it's going to come, the right way will come to him. And that's a proper mindset. That's the mindset that I believe we should have.
And what would you say to people that maybe disagree with your approach?
Yeah, and you know what? If they disagree, then they have every right to disagree. And what I would say is that I actually don't believe in convincing anyone of anything. What I believe is that if you're getting the results that you want and you're happy, don't change anything. But if you're not getting the results you want and you're not happy, here's a new perspective, and you're free to try it, and if it still doesn't work, then that's okay too. All I wanted to do today was just share a perspective that helped me transform my life, as well as a few other people as well.
And I think you've done that. So in terms of success, this is a question that's been voted on quite highly. Is there a strategy for people to know what success is for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that the way you can determine what success means to you is by paying attention to how you feel about certain things, like your emotional state. So for example, if, in the beginning I said, I wasn't very happy, I didn't really like myself in the corporate world. And the reason for that was because I felt that when I was doing certain things, there could be better ways of doing things, right? Or there could be another avenue I could look at, or there could be a new perspective to take. And so I paid attention to that, and I realized that the reason, or what makes me feel successful is the fact that I don't have to do things the same way all the time. And my emotions guided me because I felt frustrated that I couldn't actually try something different, and I had to do it the other way.
Okay.
And so the emotions that you feel are really a good indicator that will help you determine what success means to you. If you're feeling happy and you're excited and you're very content, then honestly I would say don't change anything because you're already in the place you want to be. But if you're frustrated, you're disappointed, and you have a lot of fear and doubt, then I would say maybe you want to change your perspective a little bit.
So is there maybe a practical way, like people could do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so again, I touched on it a little bit, and one of the things that I would suggest is actually look at the areas where you want to have more success and figure out where you want, really get good at articulating what success means to you. Okay, so let's say you want to have a specific career. Okay, so articulate what that career is. Get very clear on it. In fact, write a couple of pages on what this career is. And even if it's not available to you right now, write it out. Okay, this is the career that I want. These are the kind of responsibilities I want. This is the kind of income I want to make. This is the kind of people I want to work with. These are the kind of places I want to go. These are the kind of tasks I want to perform. And write it all out. And so now your definition of success is very clear. Then what you want to do is you want to start paying attention to your mindset, and that is, do you believe you can achieve it? Well, if you don't, start giving yourself reasons why you can do it. Start looking for ways how you're going to do it. Because I promise you one thing, the potential of a human being is unlimited. The potential of a human being is unlimited. I'll repeat that. The potential of a human being is unlimited. But we've been told it's limited by our environment. But honestly, it's unlimited. You just have to believe it.
So kind of building on the environment point that you just raised, so how much of an impact can an environment make?
Environment, in my opinion, is the number one thing that affects our mindset. Number one, it plays such a big impact we don't even realize it. So in terms of the amount, I read a really great quote that I agree with. And the quote was, "We become our environment." I'm going to repeat that one again too. We actually become our environment. So I don't know if some of you know people like this, but you may know people who have a lot of talent. And I see this all the time in academics in schools. I see a lot of students with a lot of talent, a lot of intelligence, a lot of insight. But what do? They hang around with the wrong people. And those people distract them. And they tell them, don't go to class, don't do this, you don't need to do that. It's okay if you fail your midterm, you're only in your first year, you can mess up, all that stuff. Those students never regain their confidence and their insight again. Why? Because their environment has now polluted their mind. And then they now don't believe they're very successful. And fortunately in my life, I had some very good friends, and one of my good friends is right here, Riaz. And when I was younger and I was actually struggling, Riaz gave me some really good information. And he said, listen, if you're not doing well, hang around the smartest students you can find. So in my school, there were Asian students. And so I started hanging around with them. And if they had noodles, I had noodles.
Amazing. And I mean, an environment is also what you consume as well. So how can that play a part? So like Netflix, things like that.
Yeah, so if you look at the majority of the environment that we're surrounded by, it's actually not very good. Like for example, what's on Netflix? A lot of it is drama, people doing bad things to other people. There's like murders, there's killings and things like that. And that's
There's reality TV.
reality TV, things like that. So we're just put that in our head all day long. But what if you put that stuff away? I mean, once in a while it's okay. We saw a good movie yesterday, and there's a lot of violence in that. But once in a while it's okay. But what if consistently you decided that, you know what, every day I'm going to read a good book that's going to explain to me how valuable I can be and my own potential, and it helps you see your own potential. So one of the things that really helped me from going off of academic probation to getting a 4.0 was a book I read called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. That book literally rewired my mind, and that book became my new environment. Not my friends, not my buddies. Anthony Robbins became my new environment, and because of him and because of the concepts he taught, it completely changed my mindset, and I started believing that it was possible. When I started believing, I started coming up with strategies on how to do it. And so that's just one example. But now think about it. That was back in the day, but now we have YouTube videos. There's so many great YouTube videos that can teach us about our potential. They can teach us how to use our mind more effectively. They can teach us skills that we can actually implement in the real world. There's also a lot of junk. This is why we have to filter out this information very, very carefully. Right? So there's books, there's YouTube videos, there's some really good movies out there, things like that.
TED Talks.
TED Talks are very good, especially the one by Aleem Nasser, the best one. But no, TED Talks are excellent. In fact, that was actually one of the reasons I wanted to do one, because I saw so many good TED Talks, and I was like, that became a goal of mine. I'm like, I would love to do one, but I had a lot of doubt. So I actually had to build my mindset that I could do it. And guess what happened? It came to fruition.
Another question that's come in that's actually had a lot of votes was, how do you bounce back when you've lost motivation?
Yeah. So motivation is a very interesting concept. Okay, motivation is a very interesting concept because people define motivation as something that happens to them. Okay, so motivation is not really that. Motivation isn't like the wind, like wind changes direction one day, which means you're not motivated, then it changes direction the other way, and then you're motivated. You can't think like that because you're always susceptible to your environment that way. If you want to get motivated, you do the thing that you want to get motivated to do. So if you want to get motivated to go to the gym and you'll get motivated.
Because the action of going to the gym will make you feel better?
Yeah, because just in the process of doing the thing, your motivation starts to increase naturally. Motivation is built by doing the thing, not let me rephrase that. Motivation is built by making an attempt to do the thing. If you're going to wait to feel motivated, you're probably not going to do it. But if you keep doing it, then you'll start to get that motivation.
So another question that's come in that I think ties in really well to that is, how do you get yourself to believe that you're able to accomplish the goal?
Yeah, so the best way to get yourself to believe that you can do something, in my opinion, is maybe I'll give you 3 steps. Okay, the first one is start getting around an environment which will convince you that you can do it. This is why parents are critical. If you are a parent and you start criticizing your child all day long, what are you actually doing? You're destroying their mindset. You are destroying their mindset, and you may think you're motivating them, but you're hurting them more than you think. If you can keep on reminding them why they can succeed, why they can do it, why they're capable, you're now improving their mindset. The result may not happen right away, but you've done something really valuable. You've helped them see evidence and given them proof that it is possible for them to be successful. That's the first one. The other one is that you may not have the right people around you, so it's better to get away from them than to be around the wrong people. In fact, I still remember when I was a kid, there was a saying by Prophet Muhammad on my grandmother's refrigerator. It was one of those magnets. And basically it was a hadith, and it said, it is better to be alone than in the company of bad people, and it is better to be in the company of good people than to be alone. And I memorized that, and that's kind of how I try to live my life.
Can you say that again? There you go.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
So the hadith was, it is better to be alone than in the company of bad people, and it is better to be, it is better to be alone in the company of bad people, and it is better to be in the company of good people than to be alone.
Amazing.
Yeah, it always sounds better the first time. But I remember that probably when I was 15, and it just stuck with me.
Okay. How do you resolve feelings of personal unfulfillment, i.e. feeling as if you've not achieved your full potential?
So if you've not achieved your full potential, that just means you probably had the wrong mindset up to that point. Mm-hmm. But you can always, one of the beauties about being a human being is we can improve this. We're not like an animal or a creature. As a human being, we have an amazing ability, and that is to improve our mind. So if you're not successful up to this point, you can always improve it. You can always improve it. You can always learn a new skill. You can always speak to somebody who's achieved something that you want to achieve. You can always gain knowledge by reading something about it. Mm-hmm. Like I said, go to YouTube. I mean, the internet is filled with really good information. I mean, there's a lot of bad information, but there's a lot of good information too. So not achieving something really is just a matter of you just making the decision that you're going to do it and develop that mindset that you're not going to stop until it's done.
And I guess, time is there for us right now, so take advantage of it, right? It can happen. I saw just now on stage that it's very quick to make that transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can honestly tell you that a lot of reasons that, I'm not too sure if you guys are aware of this, but at most universities today, they are hiring more counselors, more psychiatrists, because a lot of students are feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. And the reason for that is because they believe that the workload is getting more and more. Mm-hmm. Maybe. But in my opinion, the reason is because these students were never taught how to think. We go to the gym, we work out every day to make our bodies stronger, but who actually teaches us how to think? We've never been taught that. If we learn how to think, everything is transformed.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, this again is a very good question. So many young individuals face insecurities that are extremely hard to overcome. How do you suggest a mindset that can help to alter this?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Many young individuals face insecurities that are extremely hard to overcome. How do you suggest our mindset can alter this?
So when you say the word insecurities, that I don't really know if I understand. I'm assuming it means challenges.
I think so, yeah.
So if a young child experiences...
So maybe within themselves, the anxiety that perhaps you talked about earlier on in life.
Yes.
So how you can deal with insecurity, anxiety, that can be a roadblock for success.
So anxiety, and I'm going to just touch on this for a while. And by the way, just so you know, I used to have a lot of anxiety when I was a kid.
Okay.
And anxiety is really... I mean, unless it's and again, I'm not an expert, okay, so I could be wrong in this, but you could have a biological situation in your mind which causes anxiety, okay? That's not what I'm referring to, okay? If it's a biological hereditary gene that causes anxiety, please disregard what I'm going to say, okay? But majority of anxiety is just improper thinking. Majority of anxiety is using your imagination in the wrong way. We all have an imagination. The problem is people who have anxiety, they let that imagination go sideways. If, for example, you look at somebody who's going to maybe attempt a new task or a new career, if you talk to them, most of the time they're probably going to say something like, oh, I hope it goes well. I don't know if it's going to go well. I'm a little bit scared. I'm a little bit afraid. It's something new. That's normal, but that's also misuse of imagination. What if you started to imagine, oh my God, imagine how great my life's going to be after I figure this out. Imagine my new set of clients that I'm going to get. Imagine the new perspective on my life after I do well. We have the power to use our imagination any way we want. The problem is we've never been taught how to use it correctly.
Okay.
In fact, our default is to go in the negative.
Okay.
And I used to do that, by the way.
And this has obviously helped you in the whole of your life.
Yeah, because I started, instead of watching TV and started doing stuff that my friends did, I started reading books. And I realized that, look, my imagination is just getting the best of me, and I need to start now controlling my thoughts. And I mean, it still happens to me once in a while that I start going negative. But as soon as I go negative, I'm like, you know what? Where's that going to take me? So I said, look, I have the choice. I'm the thinker.
Yep.
right? I control my thinking does not control me. So if I'm the thinker of my thoughts, then I can pick the thoughts that I want to choose. And that's very important, right? You get to pick the thoughts that you want. The thoughts don't pick you. And never let your thoughts pick you. You pick your thoughts.
I think that's an amazing point to actually end our Q&A session with. Thank you so much, Aleem, for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I like to kind of end with a quote, and I was just going through some stuff that I read, and I feel that this is a very applicable quote. So this is a quote written by Carol Dweck, okay? And she's a Stanford and Harvard professor. And this is what she says. She says, "Real self-confidence is not reflected in a title, an expensive suit, a fancy car, or a series of acquisitions. It is reflected in your mindset, your readiness to grow." So this sums up exactly what the whole topic was for today.
Thank you for that. I'd like to thank Aleem and Rahila for taking the time to share these insights and learnings with us today. To conclude the session, I would like to invite Nasreen Savani, the outgoing chair of the Ontario Educators Alliance, to offer some closing remarks.
Thank you. On behalf of everyone here, I'd really like to thank you for sharing your story with us. I would say that it's been inspirational to see how you've taken your adversities and turned them into so many quantifiable takeaways. So Aleem, knowing you personally as well, I know that you're congruent in these actions as well in all aspects of your life, which is amazing, and it's seen in how passionate you are about what you do. As a professional educator, you've also helped to inspire me and remind me about how important it is to, think of children and see students in that way and know that you can actually inspire them to change their mindset. So thank you for that. I think we all have had areas in our life where it hasn't been a straight line path to success. And so the way you have used that adversity to really, inspire people and work with people has been inspirational. And thank you for being here with us today. Farah will now present something to you from on behalf of us. Thank you.
Thank you all to our volunteers for making this event a success. We'd also like to thank each and every one of you for attending this session and invite you to continue the conversation with some light refreshments in the atrium. Thank you and have a great afternoon.